Welcome back to Boilers and Beyond. I am your host, Jordan Jones. It was a great week for Boilermaker basketball, which picked up a pair of major wins in what may be a turning point for this young team. Meanwhile, the official end of football season has brought some changes within the Purdue football program. So let's dive in and talk about all of it here today. And the week got started on Wednesday. Purdue welcoming Ohio State to Mackey Arena in the Big Ten Conference opener for both teams. Ohio State was without forwards E.J. Liddell and Seth Towns, in case the broadcast didn't mention that enough. Liddell was dealing with a sickness, non-COVID related, according to Ohio State. Meanwhile, Seth Towns, the Harvard graduate transfer, is an incredible player, very good, all Ivy League type of player, though he has dealt with a lot of injuries throughout his career, still dealing with a leg injury, and who knows when he'll be on the court, but was not able to play on Wednesday against Purdue. The Boilers rolled out that same starting lineup that they had used in the win against Indiana State with Zach Edey and Mason Gillis starting at the 4 and 5 spots. And early on, Sasha Stefanovic really put Purdue on his back. Had, I believe, 10 points really quick in that game. And that paved the way for Travion Williams to take over. Late in the first half, early in the second half, Williams dominated, and most of it was through his passing ability. Williams had 8 assists to go along with 16 points and 9 boards. He was the first player to post that stat line for Purdue since Brad Miller back in the late 1990s. You know, Ohio State was doubling Travion Williams early in the game, and it left a lot of rollers wide open as they cut to the basket. We saw Mason Gillis get some buckets off of that. We saw Brandon Newman get a bucket off of that, and Aaron Wheeler as well. Just great passing ability from Williams. And that's something that really separates him from so many other big men, both in the conference and that Purdue has had in the past, is that passing ability. Truly something special. You know, we saw Eric Hunter Jr. really struggled in the first half. I didn't think he was making great decisions. And in effect, that really caused Purdue to have some turnover issues and some really quick rushed shots. But in the second half, Hunter came out a lot better, had a great second half, and finished the game with 15 points. Brandon Newman was very solid down the stretch for Purdue, had some big shots late to help Purdue seal this one. But Ohio State didn't go anywhere. Their physicality really kept them in this game. Ohio State was certainly the more physical team, the aggressor in this one. Very good on the glass, a lot of offensive rebounds, played with very high energy. Credit to Chris Holtman and the Buckeyes for the energy they came out with in this one. Really thought they played hard, even if they didn't necessarily play that well. Forward Justice Suing had a very good day for the Buckeyes, 14 points, very efficient shooting as well. Meanwhile, Dwayne Washington held the 13 points on 4 of 14 shooting. A good job by the Boilers there to contain him. As a whole, Ohio State struggled from 3, going just 6 of 24 from long range. And, you know, Purdue fans are certainly remembering C.J. Walker, the one-time Purdue commit, now at Ohio State after transferring from Florida State. A tough day for him, going just 2 of 7 from the field. A little bit too much sauce for him in this one. A good win for Purdue, though. We've seen now, you know, as I'm recording this on Monday morning, Michigan State lost to Northwestern last night. Illinois lost to Rutgers, who is very good this year. There's no easy night in the Big Ten Conference. You aren't going to see a lot of easy games. So many of these games are going to come down to the wire. It certainly helped that Ohio State had E.J. Liddell and Seth Towns out, but credit Purdue for finishing strong in this one because Ohio State didn't go away. This reminded me of, a little bit when Ohio State wouldn't go away late in the second half, that 2018 loss at Mackey, where Keita Bates-Diop tips it in at the buzzer with 2 seconds left to end a 19-game winning streak for Purdue. And, Purdue had a 13-point lead in the second half before Ohio State came back and won it. Purdue didn't let that happen. Ohio State played with some really good energy, really good fight. Purdue didn't shoot the ball all that well either. 6 of 20 from deep. They did have 9 offensive rebounds to help the cause. But, 1-0 in Big Ten play is an excellent start. And that momentum took them down to Indianapolis for the Crossroads Classic matchup against Notre Dame. The Crossroads Classic has not been an event where Purdue has been particularly strong. Just 2-7 overall coming in. 2 wins coming in 2016 and 2017. We saw Travion Williams return to the starting lineup for Purdue in this one. And that didn't surprise me too much. That the benching of Williams and putting Edey in the lineup was certainly more of Coach Painter trying to light a fire under Travion Williams and motivate him to play to his potential more so than it was a promotion of Zach Edey. Purdue gets off to a great start. In the first half, Purdue lights it up from 3, 57%, 8 of 14 from long range, shooting 56% from the field. But Purdue did run into a problem, and I'll break this down a little bit more. But Travion Williams picks up 2 fouls. Zach Edey picks up a third before half, and Notre Dame finishes the first half on a 10-0 run. Game goes to halftime with Purdue up by 5. Notre Dame ties the game in the second half, but Purdue bounces right back. Eric Hunter Jr. was sensational in this one. 18 points, 5 rebounds, 8 assists, and he helped Purdue pull away late. Purdue wins this one going away 88-78. Notre Dame was an interesting team to watch. They just launched 3-pointers throughout the afternoon. 41 of Notre Dame's 61 field goal attempts were from deep. Santa Clara grad transfer Trey Wirtz paved the way for Notre Dame. 27 points on 8 of 13 from the field. He was a guy who Purdue hadn't seen much of. The transfers were only just given immediate eligibility earlier in the week, so it's not like Purdue knew much of what Wirtz was going to do, but he had a great day with 27. But elsewhere in the Notre Dame offense, their leading scorer, Prentice Hubb, came in averaging 19 a game. Purdue held him scoreless on 0 for 7 from the field. Eric Hunter Jr. got that assignment and locked him down, did a great job. Notre Dame as a whole, with 41 field goal attempts, shot well, making 39% of their threes, but Purdue was at 50%. 18 points from Hunter and Sasha Stefanovic, who was excellent. 14 from Travion Williams, and then 12 points, 9 rebounds from Mason Gillis, who has been really, really good for Purdue. The 2-year drought in the Crossroads Classic is over. Purdue is now 6-2 as they head into a stretch of 19 straight Big Ten games to finish the regular season. Some thoughts here from a very successful week. Eric Hunter Jr. is incredibly important to this team. We see his ability to put the ball on the floor and go make plays. That can't be overstated. It's so important to this team because so much is able to open up around him when he does that. He's a great free throw shooter. He's solid from 3. He is by far Purdue's best mid-range jump shooter. He does a lot of things well. And another area that's vital for Hunter Jr. is his ball handling ability. When Purdue lost to Clemson, so many of its problems in that game stemmed from their lack of ability to get set in the offense. They turned it over a lot very early in the shot clock, and they struggled to get set up in the half-court offense. And that was really because they didn't have a reliable ball handler to be the primary ball handler and get the ball up the court. Eric Hunter Jr. solves that problem, and Purdue will face a team that wants to press again. Maryland has done that to Purdue quite a bit in the past. Iowa, who Purdue has up next, I remember the game in 2016 where Iowa pressured Purdue like crazy in the second half, and Purdue blew a huge lead. Purdue's going to get pressed again. Eric Hunter's ability to really control the game with his ball handling is huge. His return elevates Purdue from what we saw in the Space Coast Challenge, a very limited team to some degree, to now, the offense is just so much more dynamic with him able to put the ball on the floor and go make plays. The 5 spot is always an interesting area for Purdue sports and Purdue basketball in particular there. They have always had such good play at the center position, going back to Joe Barry Carroll and all the way now to Travion Williams and Zach Edey. Williams continued his great play from the Indiana State game in both these games this week, and that's so big for Purdue. His passing ability was on full force against Ohio State, as I said, 8 assists, and just some really great stuff from him. He's really been good at slowing down once he catches the ball and reading the defense to see what's there. He's slowed the game down, and you can see how much more that helps him, because when he recognizes that one-on-one coverage, he's been really good at going to the basket and getting to his jump hook, his best plays down from the post. And those post moves were excellent against Notre Dame. Can't say that enough. He really helped Purdue put that game away in the second half. Had a couple of fadeaway jump hooks, had a big dunk on an assist from Hunter Jr., with about 2 minutes to go to put it out of reach. Williams is averaging 10 rebounds a game so far. If he keeps playing at the level we've seen in the last 3 games, combined with Eric Hunter Jr., this is going to be a really successful team. I don't know what the ceiling is for this group, but it's going to keep getting higher the more Williams and Hunter play this well. And then on the other side of the 5 spot, Zach Edey had a pretty tough week. The Ohio State game was not his best performance. 0 for 3 from the field, just 1 point. Ohio State was physical with him. And that's Chris Holtman's strong suit. That's what Ohio State does. They're very physical down low. I don't know that Edey was necessarily ready for that. He's young. He hasn't played a ton of basketball. It's certainly understandable. And there's a certain learning curve for any freshman coming to big-time college basketball, in particular, a freshman as inexperienced as Zach Edey. We saw his offensive fouls really become a problem again against Notre Dame. Had one on a moving screen early, and then the flagrant one that drew a lot of reaction, his 3rd foul of the first half. If you haven't seen it, you can search it on Twitter. You'll certainly find it. It's certainly a foul, and there were, Purdue fans have long been accustomed to seeing this with Isaac Haas and now Zach Edey getting officiated a little bit differently because of how tall they are. But you can't go with an elbow into the face, and that's what Zach Edey's still learning, is how to post up without going super wide with the elbows. These offensive fouls are going to keep getting called. We saw it on Haas for so long. We're going to see it with Edey here. He's so much further ahead of where Isaac Haas was at this time in his career that there's a lot of reason for optimism about him, and I really think this isn't going to be as big of a problem for him. I think he's going to figure it out, but certainly something to monitor. And those foul problems, as I brought up, Notre Dame goes on a 10-0 run to end the first half, because Williams and Edey had each picked up 2 fouls. Edey came to the bench, and then he comes back in with about a minute and a half to go, and on the first offensive possession, he picks up that flagrant 1 for his 3rd foul. It's a really tough conundrum for Purdue and Matt Painter because the offense really struggles without one of those 2 big men in there. Mason Gillis plays the 5 when neither of those 2 are in there, and that's tough. Gillis has been fantastic, but he's not a 5. And when this has hurt Purdue twice now. We saw it against Miami, and we saw it against Notre Dame. Thankfully, it didn't end up costing Purdue like it did against Miami, but, it's a tough situation. Purdue can't afford to have both of those guys in 2 foul spots, and especially cannot afford Zach Edey to pick up a 3rd before half. I don't know that I have any answers there, just more speaking out loud and wondering what's going to happen there, but difficult for Purdue when they have both those guys on the bench. The offense just doesn't flow as well because you can't try to go inside-outside or anything. You're a lot more limited. If Travion can continue this level of play for Purdue, though, there's going to be a lot less pressure put on Zach Edey, and that's going to be crucial as Purdue moves into Big Ten play. It's going to be interesting to see how high of a level Williams can continue to play at. There's some really good big men coming up on the schedule with Luka Garza, Kofi Coburn, Trace Jackson Davis comes in early January, so going to be interesting to see there. The guard spot is getting really interesting now with the return of Jaden Ivey. Purdue now has 6 guards competing for minutes, and it's very obvious that Eric Hunter Jr. and Sasha Stefanovic should not and will not be coming off the court very much. Hunter provides so much to this offense, as I described earlier, and Sasha Stefanovic, one of the best shooters in the conference. He makes very good decisions, plays solid defense, and he's really improved his shooting outside of Mackey Arena. That's an area that's been criticized by some, and last year he did struggle outside of Mackey. This year he's off to a really good start, shot the ball very well at Bankers Life Fieldhouse on Saturday. And then Brandon Newman has started every game. For a freshman, he's been excellent. He's got such a tremendous upside. He's gotten better on defense, and I think as his decision-making gets better, he's going to be an incredibly valuable piece. Jaden Ivey has to be on the floor a fair amount, another guy with great upside. We saw, he comes back against Ohio State, his first stretch, takes some ill-advised shots, a couple of air balls in there, but, you can live with that aggression from a guy who has the upside of Jaden Ivey. We saw this with Carson Edwards, and I think they're different players, but they both have that scoring mentality that you really do like to see from an explosive guard. He creates well off the bounce. We saw a really nice shot as he was going to his right, just outside the lane against Notre Dame, kisses one off the glass, and then he had some transition buckets against Ohio State that were really, really nice. Ivey's got to be on the floor some. And then, Isaiah Thompson has struggled recently a little bit. He might be best suited off the ball. He hasn't been a great primary ball handler so far, but, his experience is important. And then with Ethan Morton, he has come along slowly. Certainly, bouncing back from mono is a huge part of that. That's a difficult task. But, for a true freshman, he is going through the typical freshman lumps a little bit, but he's such a high upside guy. Matt Painter has raved about his passing ability, and he looks comfortable in the offense as well. I do think Ethan Morton is going to be a really good player for Purdue. Only has played 10 minutes this week in the 2 games. That may be the way it kind of is for this year, barring any more injuries in the backcourt. But, Purdue's fortunate that they have the ability to bring these guys along slowly a little bit. That's what you want to do, especially this year in a free year where none of these guys' eligibility counts against them. Emmanuel Duana did return to practice this week. He dressed. I don't know that he will see any significant minutes. The end of the first half of that Notre Dame game was a prime position where if he was ready to take on serious minutes, he would have played, and Purdue went to go small. Purdue did not go with Duana in that situation. We'll see if he gets any significant minutes this year. And then Mason Gillis. What a week for him. What a day at the Crossroads Classic. 12 points and 9 rebounds in that game. Perfect from the field. He's made 10 shots in a row right now. He's incredibly physical. He plays with a ton of energy. I don't see him going back to the bench. I think he's Purdue's best option at the 4 right now. Aaron Wheeler has had some really nice days. His Indiana State game was awesome. Still struggling to score right now, though. His 3-point shooting, still pretty cold. Hasn't quite improved to the level that he was at his freshman season in 2018-19. But, as an off-the-bench option, he's pretty solid. But Gillis has just been awesome for Purdue. Tremendous amount of credit to him. Remember, he's a guy who sat out 2 full seasons of basketball, and he's still just in his first month back in live action. He has been excellent for Purdue. And this week coming up, they head to Iowa Tuesday night, 9 p.m. Iowa did just lose their first game to Gonzaga on Saturday. The Zags, in my opinion, are the best team in the country, but I think Iowa is the best team in the Big Ten so far. Luka Garza living up to all of the expectations. 29 points a game, 9 rebounds, shooting 69% from the field and 62% from 3. Garza is a monster up in Iowa City. Coming off the bench for him is former Indiana All-Star Jack Nunge. He's been very good playing in reserve for Garza, putting up 10 points, 7 rebounds a game. Those two, Nunge and Garza, and their ability to stretch the floor is going to make life really difficult for Purdue's bigs on Tuesday. They struggle to guard the perimeter sometimes. And, the two bigs are just surrounded by shooters. Joe Wieskamp, CJ Frederick, Jordan Bohannon, Connor and Patrick McCaffrey. Going to be a really tough game for Purdue. They have had success in Carver Hawkeye Arena recently, but it's going to be a good measuring stick game to see how Purdue measures up against a really good Hawkeye team. And then they come home on Christmas Day, the first time in Purdue history that the Boilers have played on Christmas, against Maryland at Mackey Arena, 2:30 p.m. tip. The Terrapins have lost 2 in a row right now. They do play LaSalle tomorrow night before they take on Purdue, but they really struggled in their Big Ten ACC Challenge loss to Clemson, and they didn't play very well either against Rutgers in their Big Ten Conference opener. Difficult transition for the Terps. They lost both Anthony Cowan and first-round pick Jalen Sticks-Smith to the NBA, and graduation for Cowan from last year's team, which was co-Big Ten champions. This year, very balanced offensive approach, very much younger, much less experienced, but Eric Ayala, Dante Scott, and Hakeem Hart all scored double digits. Aaron Wiggins and Daryl Morcell are right there too. A lot of familiar names with this Maryland team, but they were all, complementary pieces to Anthony Cowan, Jalen Smith, even going back 2 years, Bruno Fernando. Now these guys are the leading scorers and the guys who have to carry this team. They haven't scored a lot of points in those two major conference games they've played. This is a game Purdue needs to win at home, in my opinion. If Purdue wants to be a top half of the Big Ten team, this is a game they really need to win. But big opportunity for Purdue basketball this week coming up. And then a little bit on football here to wrap up the show. The season's officially over. The second bucket game was canceled. The Boilers and Hoosiers did not face off. Purdue not in the bowl game. Bowl games came out yesterday. No surprise there. But the big news was Purdue's decision to fire defensive coordinator Bob Diaco. The news broke on Thursday morning, and then later it came out that cornerbacks coach Greg Brown was gone as well. Purdue owes Diaco around $600,000 for next year, a 2-year contract, which I've said here, very rare for coordinators, but Purdue does owe him that buyout. The transition from Nick Holt to Bob Diaco just didn't work. Diaco is a fiery guy, certainly a little bit quirky. You can look at a lot of his media availability from his time as UConn's head coach. He's an odd guy. Certainly has had success as a defensive coordinator. I've brought up his Broyles Award back in 2012 with a great Notre Dame defense. I think it was difficult for him to implement a new defense during this offseason with very limited amounts of teamwork, very limited amounts of on-the-field 11-on-11 drills. But, where does Purdue football go from here on the defensive side? They haven't had much continuity there. I don't have a great answer. I think Marcus Freeman from Cincinnati would be your dream hire here. Former Hazel staffer. He's done a great job as the defensive coordinator at Cincinnati, who, went undefeated this year. Would he come back to Purdue? I don't really know. He's very young, but I think he's someone who is going to be a head coach at some point. I don't know that Purdue puts him in any better of a spot to do that than Cincinnati does. On Twitter, people have been quick to throw out the name Brock Spack. Of course, the defensive coordinator during the Joe Tiller era, has been the head coach at Illinois State since. I don't see this one happening. Spack is a Purdue legend, and I don't know that I see that being the way Brom wants to take. Maybe Spack should have gotten the head coaching job instead of Danny Hope. Spack did have some serious conversation about the Iowa defensive coordinator job in the past and didn't take it. I don't see him coming back. I don't see it being a fit for either side. But, it's been a rotating cycle of defensive coordinators since the Tiller era ended. Can it finally stop? For Purdue's sake, you really hope so. And then a couple of transfer names. Giovanni Howard, the JUCO cornerback that Purdue added this year, is back in the transfer portal. Came to West Lafayette from Kilgore Community College in Texas, and he saw some decent action this year as a reserve. A big pass breakup on 4th down helped seal the deal against Iowa in the season opener. Missed a game against Rutgers. He had tweeted out a message that made it seem that he may have been suspended. Had some disciplinary action taken on him in that game. But, I don't know where he's going to end up. It seems odd that he's leaving. I don't know that I see him going to a Power 5 school, but we'll see where he ends up. And then wide receiver transfer Ahmad Anderson Jr. is headed to Temple. He's from New York, East Coast guy. It makes sense to me. I think he could have gone. He may have been able to go to a Power 5 school. I'm very high on what Anderson can do. But, for Purdue as a whole, this year has come to a very welcome conclusion. It's time for Purdue to rekindle some momentum and really build back to what the program was doing in 2017 and 2018 when, they were 6-6 in the regular season both years, had some real excitement around the program. Hopefully Yanni Karlaftis' signing on National Signing Day will help propel Purdue into a stronger 2021 season. That's all I have for you here on the show today. Thank you for spending your time with me. Be sure to follow the show on Twitter at BoilersBeyond for updates and analysis of all things Purdue athletics. 2 big games this week for Purdue basketball. This will be the last show of the 2020 year, as take a week off next week with the Christmas holiday. We'll be back after the new year to recap all the action and see where Purdue is headed. Until next time, enjoy the holiday season. Happy holidays, happy new year, and thank you for spending time with me here in 2020.